Thank you.
So what are players saying about the president telling the Eagles to stay home? We're going to talk to a couple of former NFLers when New Day continues. Disinvited or uninvited or just canceled the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles from coming to the White House today. The president wrote, "We will proudly be playing the national anthem and other wonderful music celebrating our country today at 3 p.m., honoring America. NFL, no escaping to locker rooms." Joining us now, former NFL players Dante Stallworth and Nate Boyer. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being with us right now. Dante, I want to start with you because what appears to have happened was that a dozen or fewer Eagles were actually going to go to the White House. So the president basically said, you can't dump me, I dump you. Why were the Eagles players, in your mind, making that decision not to go?
Well, the players talked about it eloquently throughout the season. These guys from the Philadelphia Eagles have been working on a number of criminal justice reform issues. They've been working on a number of policing issues by going on their off days, going to speak with legislators in Pennsylvania, going to speak with police chiefs. And so these players have been proactive, and the president obviously does not agree with the tactics of some players that have been taken a knee, but I think it's ironic to note that none of the Philadelphia Eagles during the season last year had taken a knee. You had some guys raise a fist, but none of those guys had taken a knee. And so if the president seems to be open to some type of criminal justice reform, with having Kim Kardashian in last week in the Oval Office to discuss at least one person that's close to her on criminal justice reform. So these players, I think the president is missing out on a big opportunity here to really bring forth probably the biggest bipartisan issue in this country here in Washington is criminal justice reform, and I think the president is really missing an opportunity to move forward with that.
Nate Boyer in front of an American flag, I might add. Dante notes none of the Eagles kneeled last year. None of them took a knee. So it does, to an extent, seem that what the president is doing here is punishing them for what they think. Is that an American value? Nate, can you hear me?
Yeah, I thought you addressed Dante on that one.
No. What do you think of that, Nate?
Yeah, I mean, just like Dante said, a lot of these guys, well, none of these guys were in fact kneeling last year. And, I encouraged a lot of people, a lot of players from different sports, won various championships that we've talked about not visiting the White House. I've encouraged them that taking that opportunity to have that conversation, have that sit down, talk about criminal justice, talk about whatever issues you got going on. We got a lot of issues in our country. That's a huge thing. That's a great opportunity. That's a huge step. And now, they don't even have that chance. Maybe one of those guys did want to go up there and sit down and talk about things. I don't really know, but either way you slice it, it's just, it's a tough one. That's a kind of a time-honored tradition. I remember seeing videos of the University of Texas when they won the national championship and the whole team up there, visiting with the president, no matter who's in that seat. And I think it's just a sign of the times. It's the tumultuous era and the divisiveness and how we see these images and these symbols as just something that doesn't bring us together, but something that tears us apart. That's what hurts me more than anything, and I think hurts a lot of people that wore the camouflage uniform. And that's just a testament to where we're at as a country, and I think we're heading backwards.
Do you think players made a mistake? Do you think they missed an opportunity, the ones who had decided not to go? Nate?
Possibly in the past, but now there is no opportunity to go. But I understand from their point of view too. A lot of these guys have said, look, all I see this is potentially just a photo op, and I don't want to be a part of that. And they have very strong feelings about how their children or maybe their grandchildren will view that because of the times we live in. You know what I mean? And the way that may look. And if that's all it's about to them, then, they don't see that as really moving the conversation forward. Because at the end of the day, what this is all supposed to be about is, like you said, criminal justice. That's why Colin started sitting and then taking a knee in the first place. So we could move that conversation forward about, police brutality and race. I mean, that's why that all started. It wasn't specifically about the anthem or the flag, but it has turned into simply that. We see these images, we see something on the screen, and we sort of make a decision on our own about what's it about.
Dante, the president thinks he's winning this issue. He just does. You know, I hear it from people close to the White House. I hear it from the Republicans and Democrats who don't necessarily agree with the president, but he thinks he's winning. And the Wall Street Journal reported, you know, he flat out said it to Jerry Jones, the owner of the Cowboys. He said, "This is a very winning, strong issue for me. Tell everybody you can't win this one. This one lifts me." How do you assess that, Dante?
I mean, obviously he's catering to his base, but what's actually winning here? Democracy's not winning. What is actually being done to help move this country forward and not backwards? Criminal justice reform, again, would be a way for Trump to actually get an actual win. He could probably do that. He's expressed some type of interest in this, and you know, with obviously also bringing in Jared Kushner to kind of be the one to oversee some criminal justice reform. Where are the actions behind that? And the president had a really good opportunity, especially with the Philadelphia Eagles, who have been at the forefront of policing issues, policing inequities, and in the criminal justice system. But he's missing a valuable opportunity to try to score political points with his base. And, you know, it's not good for democracy.
And not lost on all of us, Dante, I think today, is it's not just kneeling anymore that the president has a problem with. His statement this morning noted it's not enough for players to stay in the locker room. So the president keeps on sort of moving the line here. Not only can they not kneel, they can't stay in the locker room here. He seems to be dictating what he considers to be the only appropriate behavior.
Dictating, that's a good word. He wants it his way or the highway, and obviously he's the president of the United States, and he has his say in certain things. But at the end of the day, you know, there's no winning when you're quelling dissent, when you're squashing dissent. There's no winning when you're not able to help this country move forward and to really fix a lot of the inequities in the criminal justice system.
So Nate, what happens next? Go ahead.
Competition. This isn't winning and losing. You know, everybody's losing right now. That's what it feels like to me, because we're falling apart. You know what I mean? And we're so obsessed with that as a nation. And I'm not talking about one man in one position. I'm talking about all of us. Like, everything is not this black and white, and it's not about being right all the time. You know what I mean? We need to do such a better job, everybody, of just having these conversations and like really listening to one another and really giving a damn about how each other feels. We're just going to be stuck in this place, you know, and it's a sickness that we're suffering, you know, together as a nation. And it really frustrates me, and it really hurts, because we're going in circles over and over.
Man, I hope people listen to you. I hope people are listening to you here, because it doesn't always have to be about winning or losing here. So what would your message to the president be in this case? You're the president who, you know, maybe only 10 or 12 Eagles would have gone, but he said no, ultimately. What's your message to the president?
It's not just to the president. Like I said, it's to everybody. We need to practice humility big time here. You know, we need to swallow some pride. Every single person, and understand that just your experiences, your perspective is only yours. But to gain any insight from somebody else, it takes you understanding and really believing that maybe you don't have all the answers and you're not always right all the time. You know, I struggle with it, man. It's human nature, you know, but we have to be bigger than that. We got to be better than that. I mean, it's 2018 in the United States of America. And we're acting like children. It's bad.
Look, we all struggle with it. Listening's one of the hardest things to do, and something we could all do a little bit more of. Nate Boyer, Dante Stallworth, thanks so much for coming in this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
All right, coming up in our next hour, we are going to speak with the Philadelphia Mayor, Jim Kenney. He joins us to talk about the president canceling the invitation to the Philadelphia Eagles to visit the White House today.
Okay, so he was just given a full pardon by President Trump. Why does DINESH SOUZA think he was unfairly targeted for a crime that he pleaded guilty to? He joins us to explain next.
We're in a moment
to violating campaign finance laws back in 2014. DeSouza says that the president pardoned him because the president wants DeSouza to be able to spread his principles. So here now to respond and talk about all this is DINESH DeSouza. Mr. DeSouza, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Okay, so there's been a lot of debate, as you know, about your pardon and what it signifies. What message do you think the president was trying to send by pardoning you?
I think he was trying to send the message that there was a political hit on me by the Obama administration, a kind of selective prosecution for an offense that is an offense, but is normally considered a technical offense that gets community service and maybe a fine. But in my case, to quote President Trump, they went after you with everything they got. This is the Holder Justice Department and Preet Bharara, the prosecutor in New York. And so Trump basically said, I want to set this injustice right and clear your record. And so that's what the pardon did.
And I've heard you say that before, that you think that you were sort of politically persecuted, but you pled guilty. Why did you plead guilty if you didn't think that you were guilty?
Because the government in these cases uses all kinds of strong-arm tactics behind the scenes. For example, they will say, we're going to get you for mail fraud. And you say, mail fraud? They say, yeah, because you put the check in the mail. We're going to get you for bank fraud. Bank fraud? Right. Yeah, because you withdrew the money from the bank. Right. We're going to put additional charges on you that carry 5 years in prison. Now, Allison, would you risk 5 years in prison? What would that do to your life and your career? So
I understand.
What
but
they
this
do
is what
they
prosecutors
bludgeon you.
do. I mean, just to be clear, this is what prosecutors do in every case. You make a deal about to get a guilty plea, and prosecutors tell you what you're facing. I mean, this is basically, Dinesh.
Well, it's not what you're facing. It's not what you're facing.
It is what you're facing. I mean, these are the options. They lay out your options. This happens in every single criminal case I've ever covered. And so the idea that you were politically persecuted, you didn't have to plead guilty. And as the prosecutor, Preet Bharara, has said, this was sort of garden variety campaign finance law stuff. Let me play it for you, what he says about you being treated unfairly or not, and then you can respond. Listen to this.
The questions about whether or not he was treated unfairly was litigated in the court. The judge, very well respected, Judge Berman, listened to the arguments about that, said it was all hat, no cattle. There was no evidence of that whatsoever.
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, Judge Berman is a Clinton appointee who, as part of my sentence, sentenced me to mandatory psychiatric counseling. I mean, what could be crazier than that? Am I Jeffrey Dahmer who put bodies in the refrigerator? I gave money to a college friend of mine who was running for office. So the very fact that this kind of nonsense is going on.
You use straw donors, which is illegal, and you pleaded guilty to it. But either way, look, I understand that
Yes, but look, here's the point. Allison, no American in this country's history has ever been prosecuted, let alone locked up, for doing what I did.
But I'm not sure
remember,
that's
justice
true.
isn't just a matter of did you do it.
I just want to fact check
It is true. It is true.
A simple Google check of campaign finance violations turns up all sorts of people who are convicted of these sorts of things. As you know, there was a Clinton donor who actually went to jail for much more time than you went to the halfway house. This is a real crime. People are often prosecuted for this.
No, that's simply not true. If you look at those cases, and my lawyer, Ben Brafman, compiled an extensive list of these. If you look at these cases, in virtually every single case, the government prosecutes a repeat offender, kind of like Rosie O'Donnell, who exceeded the campaign finance law on 5 different occasions.
Yes, but didn't use straw donors
there's
like
corruption
you did,
involved, some sort of a deal,
amount of money that you did.
some kind of a quid pro quo. Remember, there's no corruption even alleged in my case. So if you can find me a case, Allison, where somebody gave 20 grand with no corruption and got a more severe penalty than I did, I will completely withdraw this claim.
Okay. What I want to move on to is what you said on Fox about what the president said to you in his phone call about why he pardoned you, because I thought it was really interesting. He basically said he wanted you to be a bigger voice than ever, defending the principles that you believe in. And so I want to just go through, hear what those principles are. And I have some, I think, as reflected in your Twitter feed. So let's just go through this if this captures what your principles are. So February 2015, you tweeted about President Obama. And there are people here, racist overtones here. You can take the boy out of the ghetto, you say, Watch this vulgar man show his stuff while America cowers in embarrassment. You had another tweet in 2010 about President Obama's father. You say this philandering, inebriated African socialist is what you call him. Oh, sorry, that's from a Forbes magazine. So I'm confused. What are the principles that you are hoping to be able to talk about now and spread?
Well, Allison, first of all, I'd be happy to talk about those two tweets. Obama's father was a philandering, inebriated African socialist, as a matter of fact.
And just out of that, hold on. Are you anti-philandering?
Look, I'm not talking about this. I was referring to Obama's book, Dreams from My Father. Hold on. Let me talk about principles.
And I want to know if your principle, are you anti-philandering? Are you anti-vulgarity in your first one?
Philandering is not a principle. What I was saying is that Obama claims himself that he derived his dreams, his principles, from his father. And the Forbes magazine article listed what those principles were. It's not unreasonable to investigate that. Look, I'm a mainstream conservative. I worked in the Reagan administration. I've worked at the most reputable conservative think tanks, from AEI to the Hoover Institution. Yeah. The very idea that you can define me by a tweet or two over a long career is preposterous.
I'm not trying to define you, but I am trying to figure out what your principles are, and they seem confusing because you are obviously a supporter of President Trump's, and the idea that you would go after President Obama's father for philandering and for being vulgar, that strikes some as hypocritical. Why aren't you speaking out about President Trump's philandering? Why aren't you speaking about his vulgarity?
Well, look, my argument about Obama wasn't about philandering. Obama is not a philanderer. His father was, but Obama wasn't.
Sure,
I was focusing on the anti-colonial ideology. The anti-colonial ideology of Barack Obama Sr., which was imbibed by the younger Obama. And my book really focuses on all that. It's not a sleazy attack on an individual. It's an examination of ideas.
Okay, but when you say to somebody, you can take the boy out of the ghetto, it is a sleazy attack on an individual.
Well, look, here's Obama in the White House, and he's got this selfie stick, and he's running around looking in the mirror and making ridiculous faces.
And that's what
if people say that Trump has degraded the... Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead. So you find that more degrading than things that you've heard in the past year in terms of vulgarity coming from the White House?
Look... In fairness, I have to say, we have seen a great degradation of the White House, and this didn't start with Trump. It didn't even start with Obama. It really goes back to Clinton, because I think there was a lowering of the tone in the 90s. And I'm sorry to see all this. I'm actually sorry to see the... No, I wouldn't say. In some ways he hasn't, but I think he is also a product of an environment that's very destructive. Look, this personal attack that Trump... No, because I think that Republicans have said, basically, in the past we nominated Boy Scouts like Romney, people who are squeaky clean, and the left launched such attacks on these people that they ended up looking like Lucifer. We're finally going to appoint a tough guy who can take it and can return a punch. And so Trump, yes, I think he's in a much more in the mud, if you might say. And I regret that this is the environment we now live in, but we do.
There's one more tweet that I want to bring up with you, and it's about the Parkland students, and where you said after they went through the massacre, and then they were trying to fight gun violence, and they won some and they lost some, and you said worst news since their parents told them to get summer jobs. You apologized for that, and I'm sure that those kids appreciated that apology, but it was so shocking, frankly, the first one, that you would go after these kids who had just lived through a killing field. What principle is that you were trying to communicate there going after them?
I got to tell you honestly that was a case where I was trying to make a point that completely misfired, and I take the full responsibility. As I saw it, and this is how you get into the heat of the battle in social media, that those kids were becoming pawns in a kind of political campaign. They were being manipulated by other people. They were being, for example, dragged down to the legislature where a vote was taking place.
Well, but
and
they
so my
marched there on
target
their
was
own.
really the media
they marched
manipulation.
There on their own. They weren't dragged there. These kids were really motivated and marched there on your own. I hear what you're saying. That's how you saw it, but the facts just don't support that.
Well, what I'm saying is that, in general, teenagers do not have the sophistication to be able to track legislative votes and show up in the right place at the right time and pose for the media as if they are stars on a TV show.
I've heard this argument before, but teenagers protest all the time. Teenagers are passionate. This is what happened in the 60s. We've had this argument before. You didn't believe that I get it. You didn't think that they were acting of their own accord, but they did. But still, I appreciate you saying that tweet was a misfire, but in terms of principles and of elevating the conversation and of changing what you say about the degradation of everything we're talking about, that principle is just so reprehensible to go after them.
It is reprehensible to go after them, and I'm very sorry I did, and as you know, I apologize for it. So yes, look, I think that was unfortunate. I also think that one tends to, in social media, get sort of drawn into these sort of Twitter battles with people, and I'm going to be more careful about that in the future.
Thanks. I appreciate you saying all of that. That is certainly true. Twitter is perhaps not the best of us. One last question. Did you meet President Trump before he pardoned you?
I've never met President Trump in my life. I had spoken to him once before on the telephone, but I've never met him. And the time I talked to him to get my pardon was only the second time I've spoken to him ever.
And so when you, for instance, had done your anti-Obama film, you hadn't gone to Trump Tower and had any meetings there or talked to anybody there?
Never. Trump did tweet out, I believe, at that time that people should go see the film, but I've never met the man before.
And so now that you have been pardoned, what is your plan for spreading your word more, as the president encouraged you to do?
Well, it's to continue doing what I'm doing, and hopefully with a more magnified voice. I've got a new book and movie coming out later this summer. I don't want to go into it because I don't want to use the pardon as a way to promote things I'm doing, but I've been very excited with my current work, and I'm in the final editing stage of the movie, which will be out in August.
Okay, Dinesh D'Souza, thank you for being here. We appreciate you getting your perspective on all of this.
Thank you.
John.
Great discussion. All right, he helped make Starbucks into a global brand. Now CEO Howard Schultz is stepping down. Is politics in his future? Signs point to yes. 2020, Chief Business Correspondent Christine Romans in our Money Center with that. Romans.
Hi there, John. Schultz is ending a 36-year run as the public face of Starbucks, stepping down as executive chairman later this month. He left the chief executive office last year, but this is a guy who often had a progressive stance on things like gay marriage, immigration, workers' rights, fueling rumors that maybe he has political aspirations, something he long denied.
I have no interest in a political office. I'm here at Starbucks. I have no plans to run for office. I have no plans whatsoever to run for political office. I want to be as involved as I possibly can as a citizen to help the country. I don't know what that's going to mean in the future.
And now that future could include a bid for public office. That's what Schultz told the New York Times, later confirming to CNN he is considering a range of options, including public service. Now, the election of President Trump, of course, put a spotlight on business moguls and their political ambitions. The will you run for president question, John, has been asked of Disney CEO Bob Iger, Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg, JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon, Oprah Winfrey, and Allison, also Mark Cuban, and many others. Allison?
Why doesn't anybody ever ask me that?
Do you want to run for president in 2020, Allison?
Yep.
What are you the CEO of, other than me?
Do I have to be a CEO of something?
I think the point was the CEOs are being asked.
Oh, okay. Then never mind. Thanks, Christine.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thanks so much. So
this couple, for their wedding celebration, due to the baker's Christian beliefs, the court argued that the Colorado Civil Rights Commission was hostile toward the baker based on his religious beliefs. Joining us now is the couple at the center of this case, Dave Mullins and Charlie Craig. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being with us. I know it's probably been a tumultuous 24 hours after you waited so long for this ruling. After a day of letting it sink in, what's your reaction?
Well, thank you for having us on. When we first heard the news yesterday, we felt a lot of things, but just shock and disappointment were the main emotions we experienced. This has been going on for 6 years, and to have it turn out this way was very disappointing. After we learned more about the ruling, there were some silver linings in there that, at this point have made us feel a bit better. But it's still a disappointment, of course, to lose at the Supreme Court.
You say there are silver linings. Still, you do overall see this as a setback?
I think it's too soon to be able to say, but I think the most important thing for us that we want people to understand is that the Colorado Anti-Discrimination Act is still fully in effect in Colorado. Nothing has changed about that. It is still illegal to turn a gay couple away from a business just because of who they are.
It is, but it's complicated now, right? Because of the opinion written by Justice Kennedy. Let me read you the pertinent part here. He says the outcome of cases like this and other circumstances must await further elaboration in the courts, all in the context of recognizing that these disputes must be resolved with tolerance, without undue disrespect to sincere religious beliefs, and without subjecting gay persons to indignities when they seek goods and services in an open market. So how do you thread that needle?
Okay. So, I feel like the compromise is you get to choose what you sell at your business. You just can't choose who to sell it to.
So a baker shouldn't sell wedding cakes, period, because he or she might have to sell them to same-sex couples?
Right. If he chooses to, it's completely up to him to choose to sell wedding cakes. But once he decides to make that choice, he can't pick and choose who to sell that wedding cake to.
Jack Phillips, who is the baker at the center of this case, he spoke moments ago. Listen to what he said.
I told these two men when they came to the store, I'll sell you cookies, brownies, birthday cakes. I'll make you custom cakes. I'll make anything.
It's just the art of the cake.
This cake is a specific cake. A wedding cake is a wedding is an inherently religious event, and the cake is definitely a specific message that goes with that. I don't create cakes for Halloween. I wouldn't create a cake that would be anti-American or disparaging against anybody for any reason. Even cakes that would disparage people who identify as LGBT. Cakes have a message, and this is one that I can't create.
It's one he says that he can't create. Your reaction to that?
Well, I think it's important that we be clear on this, that Mr. Phillips would not sell us anything for our wedding. And as far as the example of the Halloween cake goes, any human being could buy a Halloween cake, but only a same-sex couple needs a wedding for a so-called same-sex wedding. They're two completely different things. One is based on someone's identity, and one is just a product that any single person could buy.
Well, and I think it's really easy to kind of get caught up on the idea of a cake, but I don't feel like our case is about a cake. Mm-hmm. It's about getting access to public accommodation.
And I do understand that. The challenge legally, and Justice Kennedy seems to be struggling with this, frankly, is how do you account for the